Well, hello there. Welcome to my Pokemon Sword and Shield review on the Nintendo Switch. Now you might be asking yourself, who is this guy and why should I care about his input on Pokemon? Well, I'm glad you asked. As you can see, I've been catching them all for a pretty long time now. So long in fact that I've probably been catching them before most of you were even born. Considering how this video's content is pretty much made for kids.
The expression about shooting fish in a barrel. And YouTube is the barrel, and the content creators are the fish.
Well, you won't be shooting this fish, FCC Director Andrew Smith.
Now before we start the video and jump into the gameplay, I'd like to address the National Dex debacle. Unless you've been living under a rock, then I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. But for the 5 people out there that don't know, and I pretty much already know 3 of you, the National Dex issue is basically, in a nutshell, means that with the inclusion of a National Dex, all Pokemon ever made are able to be put into the game. Past installments of Pokemon games had this feature, so it was customary with the entitled society we live in to expect that on this grand latest and greatest Pokemon game on the next-gen console would have this feature, right? Wrong!
And so what that means for Pokemon Sword and Shield is that players will be able to transfer their Pokemon from Pokemon Home only if they appear in the Galar region Pokedex.
図鑑の舞台に合わせて冒険の舞台に合わせてこだわって登場するポケモンを決めています。
So we were very careful. We spent a lot of time really thinking what the best selection of Pokemon to match the setting of the adventure would be.
That quote was the start of something that would later just spiral out of control, leading to the ever so infamous, highest trending topic on Twitter, the hashtag Game Freak lied disaster. Cutting to the chase, Game Freak had went on the record stating that because of how long it is taking them with redesigning the models for all the Pokemon in Sword and Shield, that they just could not feasibly put all 890 Pokemon into the games. Okay, fine, whatever. Whoops, game gets released and it's discovered that all the models are exactly the same from the previous titles. Game Freak lied in a nutshell. Now, did Game Freak actually lie?
Yep. Am I upset about it? I guess kinda, because in a sense they got rid of all the Pokemon besides the ones that sell well. Charizard! Which that really doesn't make sense to me because look at things like Charizard and Gardevoir. Yeah, they sell the most, but so does Garchomp, and he's not in the game. So when you cut my boy Garchomp, you expect me to not be a little bit upset about it? Just saying. You know, just a little Garchomp, you know? Just go throw it for comedic effect? No? Yeah.
But at the end of the day, no, I am not so mad that I'm going to not buy the game and send derogatory tweets to Game Freak. In fact, I'm most excited for the new Pokemon anyways in new mainline Pokemon games, so the fact that the National Dex isn't included doesn't bother me all that much. I think I'm more upset that they lied than the National Dex not being included, but anyways, with that out of the way, we now have a little bit more of a background before jumping in. So with that said, let's get into the gameplay.
Gameplay.
The controls for Pokemon Sword and Shield are exactly what you'd expect. It's what we've had before, but instead of a touchscreen, we now have the basic X button to the menu screen. Moving around feels so much better considering they got rid of the grid-based movement. Now you can fluidly go in any direction you want without being restricted to a grid. Now I don't remember if they did this in Pokemon Let's Go, but nevertheless it feels great. There's not much else to talk about for the controls, pretty basic and very familiar to what we're used to. So that's cool. Now let's talk about the music. The music in Sword and Shield is absolutely amazing. From the sound effects to the background music, I really did feel like I was in a new generation exploring a new region. There are quite a few catchy bops, especially towards the end of the game, that I really did enjoy, and it got my blood pumping. That gym leader theme is just mwah! Now the game for the most part was able to run pretty smoothly both docked and in handheld. The only thing worthy to note was that when you are in the wild area and the internet is on, there are so many frame skips that it becomes almost unbearable to play. This is one of those things that they really do need to patch because this is just unplayable. I find myself constantly turning it on and off, only turning it on when I am about to do a raid battle of some sort. So speaking of the wild area, man, this was just an epic tease. Like, I really do think that Game Freak did this on purpose. What I'm saying is that they gave us just a tiny taste of what an open world Pokemon game could really be. Instead, we got a restricted sandbox version, and it truly is what they called it, a wild area. It's an area. I bet you Game Freak was like, man, if we do an open world experience like Breath of the Wild, what are we gonna do next? I've got it. Let's give them a tiny taste and slowly build them into that open world experience, and bam! Dinero, baby, for 10 more years. I don't know, it just seems weird to me. They obviously have the power on the Switch, so why didn't they do this? Oh, that's right, because they were remodeling all the Pokemon. Now the story. With a couple exceptions, Pokemon has never really been about the story. They never really have developed a story compelling or went too in depth with their characters, at least for me anyways. It's no exception here with Sword and Shield. It's very bare bones and has very minor character development. Some might say 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬's character development was worth it for them, but no. There's some spoilers, so continue at your own risk. But 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬 starts out as your rival, and of course you beat him up, and as you battle him and defeat him for the very last time in the post-game, he goes, "Yeah, well, you know what? I think I'm gonna be a professor now, because apparently I suck at battling."
You suck.
The boy has no skills. You're schooled by a little girl.
And there's your character development, folks. Feels like 15 hours of delicious gameplay to get to this point, wouldn't you say? Also, as a side note, the ending of this game was so rushed. It felt very incomplete and just had me throwing up my hand saying, what? Seriously? Like they couldn't space it out any better than how they did? Basically, you're battling the champion, and then the chairman comes in and goes, hey, you know what? The future is going to be a problem. I'm going to try and fix the future. So with this Pokemon that literally apparently has something to do with the future because of history or something, like literally it was just so completely out of place, and they really needed to do a better job at conveying that story. It just felt like it should not have been there. You can ask anybody, it just did not seem very coherent at all. So yeah, the story overall was pretty meh, and that's usually the case as previously said, so moving on. As a final statement, the overall main story took me about 15 hours to complete. That's battling every trainer, thoroughly exploring every part of the map, and the tiny bit of post-game that really just should have been part of the main story, but whatever. So I think that is a good amount of time. That's usually what I come to expect with Pokemon mainline games anyways. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the aesthetics.
Aesthetics!
I want to start off by saying they did a really good job designing the environment with a few minor exceptions. They were shooting for a British-inspired region for Galar, and I really feel like they nailed it. They were super consistent with the British theme, and you can tell just how much time they put into it, just from the building designs and even through all the speech the inhabitants of Galar have. The Pokemon all look really good, especially the new ones. I really love the new Pokemon they introduced. James Turner, the art director for Sword and Shield, absolutely crushed it. I think out of all the things I like about Sword and Shield, the new Pokemon are probably the best thing. I can only think of a couple that I don't like, but other than that, I really liked all of them, and it was super hard making my team of 6 throughout the main story. The designs of all the characters were pretty cool, especially the gym leaders. They all stand out very well. They were given names that were memorable and personalities that seemed appropriate for their character. A really nice change in pace from previous titles. Speaking of the gyms, they were smartly designed after the Premier League stadiums in Europe, and hold that charm throughout the whole game. How do they make it even more grand than that? Well, by making the Pokemon bigger, of course. Yes, with every Pokemon game as of late, there seems to be some new battling gimmick introduced. In Pokemon X and Y, it was the Mega Evolutions. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, it was Z moves. And finally, with Pokemon Sword and Shield, it is Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing. Basically making your Pokemon big for 3 turns and making your moves super powerful with an additional effect tagged along. From a competitive standpoint, I don't think this was a very good design choice. I won't go too in depth on this for surface level review reasons, but it really raises some red flags for the future of the competitive VGC scene. But from a basic playthrough of the game, I think it's actually probably one of the weakest gimmicks we've had. I mean, I get why they went with this. It's in a big stadium, why not make the Pokemon big? But that's just the thing, it seems super lazy just making them big. I will definitely give them props with the Gigantamaxing side. Giving the Pokemon new appearances in their giant forms was really cool. I just wish they did that with all of the Pokemon. But I get why there was a limitation here, because they were redoing all the Pokemon models. But just by making the Pokemon big with no new design seems pretty lame. That's my opinion though. I like the Megas more than the Z moves, and I like the Z moves more than Dynamaxing. So oh boy, what's gonna be next?
Overall.
This is a weird game to judge. As I've stated, I'm a pretty big Pokemon buff. While growing up and playing all the games and have been heavily involved in the Pokemon trading card game, it's hard not to have a little bias in judging these games. So that's why I have come to the decision to rate them based on being a Pokemon game and as being a Nintendo Switch game. First, as a Pokemon game, they went in the right direction as far as doing something new and providing fresh content. The new Pokemon were a joy and the Galar region was a pleasure to explore, but that's pretty much what I've come to expect with a new mainline Pokemon game. What Sword and Shield did differently were things like the wild area and Dynamaxing, and both of these things seemed very promising upon the first trailers we saw, but they just don't hold up to those hopes and dreams of the games that I really wish they could be. So as far as a Pokemon game is concerned, I'd probably put it in B tier. Now as a Nintendo Switch game, I probably would also throw it in B tier, funny enough. It has quite a few technical issues that really do need to be patched, and the amount of playtime this game offers to the casual Switch gamer is not all that great. For a Pokemon fan like myself, I'll be spending well over 100 hours on this game, filling out my Pokedex, breeding competitive Pokemon, and even finding shiny Pokemon. But that's because I'm me, and I spend a lot of time on Pokemon. You can ask anybody and they'll tell you that Pokemon has been a huge passion of mine since a very young age. But with my bias aside, I can tell that this game won't provide the everyday Switch owner with that amount of content. While these games do provide more than enough content for Pokemon fans alike, they just don't hold up for the regulars, which is why I'm going to put this in B tier on the Switch shelf. If you haven't done so, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for future videos. Also, if you'd be so kind to spread this video and this channel around like wildfire, I'd be so incredibly grateful. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace!